good afternoon, Bishop Stephen. Thank you very much for agreeing to have this a talk with us. I wondered if we might be able to have a discussion about a few questions that we've discussed. One of the things we wanted to ask you is, what do you mean when you say we should be living out our Christian faith joyfully?
Oh, well, I mean, the Christian faith is a joyful thing. It seems to me there's two things Christians should never be guilty of. We should never be guilty of being without hope, and we should never be guilty of being without joy. Now, that doesn't mean that we should turn our backs on the pain and sadness and frankly, the horrors of our world. But it does mean that the first message of the Christian faith is always Christ is risen. In the midst of all the pains, the sorrows, the difficulties of the world, we proclaim a message of hope and joy. So unless we are joyful in our faith, unless we are full of hope, then I don't think we're going to get very far with anything else.
Thank you. I agree with you. I think trying to separate out the two things is quite hard for a lot of Christians, isn't it? And I know that trying to convey this message, you're conducting training across the diocese at the moment, thinking about the actual outworking of our faith, mission and evangelism. And I wonder why you thought we had to have this big drive to do this thing that maybe lots of churches think should be something that's part of them anyway.
Yes, I think we need to be honest in the Church of England that we've not always been as good as we should have been at sharing our faith. It's not that we don't want to share our faith, but some people say, that's what it is. No, it's not that. Of course we want to share our faith. We long to see our churches grow. We long to see the Christian faith make an impact, not just in individuals' lives, but in the whole of the society. It's just that in the Church of England, we've kind of, we've kind of run a come to us policy. So if somebody does come to church, we're pretty good at making them welcome. Not perhaps as, I think sometimes we think we're better than we actually are, but let's be generous. We're pretty good at making them welcome. But we're not so good at getting out into the community and commending the Christian faith, explaining the Christian faith, sharing the Christian faith. So I felt, and a number of others have felt, well, let's not be down about this. Let's learn how to do it a bit better. So we have embarked, we're 2/3 of the way through, a great training process. And thousands of people have come. I mean, when I began this, BBC Essex interviewed me, and they said to me, how many people do you hope will come to all these training evenings? And I started doing that thing that vicars do by saying, it's not all about numbers. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, it's a fair question. So we're doing 19 training events, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be good if we got 100 people at each one? So I said 2,000. Well, by the time we've finished, it'll be definitely 4,000, could be 5.
That's wonderful.
A lot of people have come. And so I sense that there is a recognition in not every Church of England parish, but in many Church of England parishes, a recognition, yes, we do want to share our faith. No, we're not quite sure how to do it. Let's get some help.
So I guess the challenge really is getting the people in our congregations to understand what it means to witness for their faith. That maybe it's not soapboxes, for instance.
Well, exactly. I mean, one thing we've been saying in the training, and I find this a huge relief, is that God, the Holy Spirit, is the evangelist.
Yes.
It's not my job to convert somebody to the Christian faith. It's not your job. And even if we thought it was, we couldn't do it anyway. This is not a human work. It's the work of God. But actually, that's a relief. You say, well, I don't have to do that. I don't have to persuade somebody to become a Christian. I don't need to sort of twist their arm behind their back and say, you must become a Christian. My responsibility is to be, well, first of all, a faithful witness. And what does a faithful witness do? You just say it how it is, to say, this is who Jesus is for me, this is the difference he's made in my life, this is how I see it. That's all you need to do. Now, I know for some people that will be quite hard and a bit embarrassing, but that's what you're being asked to do. You simply say, that's what evangelism means. It means sharing good news. So what's the good news of Jesus for you? and to share that with others. And I suppose the other thing, as well as being a faithful witness, I would say we're called to be a living signpost.
Yes.
So our lives should speak of Christ.
Yes.
Now, of course, I'm well aware how my life often fails to do that, but nevertheless, I believe that God is asking me and each of us to be a living signpost, so that people might glimpse Christ in us. Not because we're so good, but hopefully because we're generous, we're kind, we're gentle, we're humble. Also, I think because the way I put it is like this: we are generous and merciful to others because God has been generous and merciful to us.
I think that's probably part of the attraction, isn't it? That actually we are not perfect people, but we are doing our best.
Yeah.
And maybe that encourages others who may want to be taking that step of faith.
Yeah, I think that's one of the worries that a lot of English people have, is that we're naturally a bit reticent and we don't like to push ourselves forward, and we don't like people to think that we're suggesting somehow we're better than they are. And I said, well, no, of course you're not better than they are. Being a Christian isn't actually about being good. I mean, I hope we're good and we try to be good, but being a Christian actually is about knowing you need God. In a way, it's acknowledging that you're not good. It's acknowledging that you need forgiveness. You need God. So we're sharing not our superior goodness, we're sharing the fact that we've found help, we've found forgiveness, we've found peace. One of the best definitions of sharing the Christian faith is one beggar telling another beggar, this is where you can get some bread.
That's wonderful, isn't it? And I know in one of your previous videos that you have made for the diocese, you spoke about the institution of the Church of England and how it's such a vast machine, if you like, spreading throughout the whole of the United Kingdom. And I wonder how you think that may be used to help us in our work of evangelising and work of mission.
Well, the Church of England is an amazing thing. Just in this diocese, in Essex and East London, we have over 600 churches. We have a branch in every single community. That is amazing. Then if you multiply that across the whole nation, you get to about 16,000 branches. And now that's before we've spoken about prison chaplains, school chaplains, hospital chaplains, police chaplains. We even now have chaplains. If you go to Lakeside, there's a chaplain at Lakeside.
Yes.
And a prayer room. A lot of people don't know that exists, but there's a prayer room at Lakeside. So we have a presence, everywhere. Equally, although the church, is not as big as it used to be, and not as big as we'd like it to be, there are still thousands and thousands and thousands of Christians. Each Christian is a presence in your home, in your place of work, in your local community. You are the presence of Christ in that place. So when I think of the Church of England, although it is an organisation, I think of it as this great community of Christians right across this nation, stretching back in time, and it's something very, very beautiful that we should be proud of and proud to be part of.
Most businesses would be envious of us,
Yes.
wouldn't they, having the opportunities
Yes, they would.
that we do. One of the things I am very aware of, Bishop Stephen, is that we live in an increasingly multi-ethnic society, and one of the challenges we have as a church is perhaps to work alongside other faiths and to cooperate with them in the mission of peace in our world. And I wonder, how can we continue to do that and still be true to our teaching in the church that Jesus is the way, the truth and the life? I know that's a challenge that puzzles many churches.
Yes, well, let me see if I can help. First of all, we need to remember there is only one God.
Yes.
There is only one God, and we share that belief with the great faith traditions of the world. So it's wise to remember that. So we would say as Christians that because there's only one God, whenever any human being from the from the goodness of their heart offers a prayer, it must be to the one God, because there is only one God. That's the first thing to say. Second thing to take note of is that Jesus, in his most famous stories, made the hero someone from another faith. It's always wise for Christians to remember that. It's a story about a good Samaritan. And perhaps when we read that story today, we don't realise Jesus was a Jew and Samaritan was another faith tradition. Yes. So he made the hero of his most famous story someone of another faith. Also, the woman at the well was a Samaritan woman. There was a Syro-Phoenician woman. There's lots of people of other faiths and other cultures who Jesus makes the hero of the story. So I think what Jesus is telling us is that we can learn from people of other faiths. Very clearly, he says that. It's in the Bible itself. You can learn from people of other faiths. But that doesn't mean that we have to water down or relinquish the things that we believe. We believe there's only one God, and we also believe that access to that one God comes in and through Jesus Christ. That's not negotiable for us as Christians. What God has done in Jesus through his death and resurrection is the way to the Father. So we can at one and the same time hold on to the uniqueness of what God has done in Jesus Christ, and yet at the same time say, well, it's that same Jesus who is the way to the Father, who's also told us in his own stories there are things to learn from people of other faiths. Yes. That means, I think, that we should work alongside all people of goodwill, people of other faiths, when we can make common cause over issues of peace and justice in our world, and at the same time we can have dialogue and conversation with them where we shouldn't be in the slightest bit ashamed of saying to them that we believe the goodness that we can see in their religion will find its fulfilment, can only find its fulfilment in Jesus Christ. Yes. So that's how I see it. And my own personal experience, for many years I lived and worked in Huddersfield in West Yorkshire, and the parish I was based in, 70 or 80% of the parishioners were Muslims or Sikhs. So I don't claim to be an expert in interfaith dialogue, but one thing I learnt very quickly living amongst a lot of Muslims and Sikhs was they love to talk about God. Yes. They love to talk about God. And the thing they often can't understand about us Christians is that we don't seem to want to talk about God. So it wasn't them thinking, oh, I wish these Christians wouldn't try to convert us. They were mystified and puzzled that we didn't try. Yes. You know, they'd say, oh, they're a bit wishy-washy, these Christians, because they don't talk about their faith like we do. So never think, as a Christian, please don't think you're going to offend somebody of another faith if you tell them about Jesus Christ. On the contrary, they might be more offended if you don't.
Perhaps we're mixing up Britishness with our understanding of faith.
I think we are. And so, of course, we have to do it with a generosity of spirit, but then you have to do that with everybody. You know, the only way to share your faith effectively is to do it with generosity.
Well, I think you're right, and I think that will clarify a few things for churches who are very troubled by how to do that. Yeah. And maybe we need to put aside our reservations as British people and actually just be joyful in the proclamation of the gospel. Thank you very much, Bishop Stephen.
Thank you,
It's been a pleasure to meet you.
It's lovely to chat with you, and perhaps I could pass on warm good wishes and prayers to the people of the church where you serve.
Thank you very much.